So, good morning, everybody. And
Good morning.
we are really pleased to have Ralph back with us. This will be Ralph's third lockdown tour for us. And today we're going to Amsterdam and to Haarlem, and it's going to be really good. So, welcome to all those of you who are watching on YouTube. Please do subscribe to our channel and take a moment at some point to catch up with any talks that you've missed. Don't forget, all you regulars, that we put these onto our YouTube channel, so you can watch again or you can watch something that you've missed. So we'll do our normal thing today, and we'll hand over to Ralph, and we'll break for coffee at 10 to 11. Okay, Ralph, thank you.
Very good, thank you. Good morning, everybody.
Good morning.
Good to be with you. Good to be with you all, and thanks to Pat and Peter for asking me to do this again. Right, Amsterdam. When we're doing a short break, a city break or whatever, Liverpool's quite convenient because we have EasyJet and Ryanair flying low cost, and Amsterdam is about 3/4 of an hour away. You spend longer in the airport than you do on the flight. So this was a trip over to Amsterdam in April a couple of years ago. I'd been to Amsterdam as a stop off en route to Germany when I was working over there. So I'd seen a little bit about it and really wanted to explore the capital of the Netherlands. Right. Amsterdam, as you can see on the map there, is situated on this inland sea, the Markermeer, and you can see also where Haarlem is, near the North Sea. Amsterdam, that whole area of Holland is at or below sea level, and Amsterdam itself was a tiny little fishing village on a boggy area of land, and the River Amstel flowed from inland and out into the inland sea there, and they dammed the river in order to create a wider area for tying up the boats, the fishing boats and the trading boats, and hence the name, the Amstel Redam. So it's a dam across the river. And they put a bridge over it then. This was after flooding in 1100, so the origin is quite back then. And then around that central area, they built a number of canals, sort of in approximately semicircles, so that the boats could tie up, and they built warehouses alongside these various canals. And gradually Amsterdam became an important trading port. An aerial map just showing you, first of all, Amsterdam in that area there. That's where Schiphol Airport is, where you fly in, and there's a high-speed train link into the centre. And then later on this morning, we'll have a look at Haarlem. Later on, the Amsterdam grew in importance, and they constructed the canal that you can see to the top of the picture there, out to the North Sea. The thing about Amsterdam, there was obviously the Spanish were there, and in the 16th century, the Dutch rebelled against Philip of Spain, and all to do with taxation as much as anything. But the Dutch Republic became known for its religion. Jews from the Iberian Peninsula, Huguenots from France, merchants and printers from Flanders, and various other people settling safely in Amsterdam. And it becomes an incredibly important cultural centre. And also in the golden age of Amsterdam, the shipping, they started the Dutch East India Company and the Dutch West India Company, and goods, all sorts of exotic goods, spices and so on were brought in to Amsterdam. Now on this old map, you can see the concentric lines of canals that connect from the inland sea, and right in the center near the top, almost vertical on the map, is the dam rack, which was the old part where the Amstel River was originally dammed to create the small port and wharfs for the ships. When we go on a city break, we try to do a bit of homework first, and we've always found that the Dorling Kindersley eyewitness guides are incredibly useful. And together we had this little pocket pop-out map of Amsterdam and an everyman guide, again with pop-up with more details of each of the areas. And when we arrived, well, we pre-booked, but you can get a city card, which allows you travel on, free travel on the trams, and 25, 30% or free entry to many of the museums, and quite a number of the restaurants also offer discount if you show your card. So we find it's well worthwhile exploring something like that. When we were there, obviously we were able to pick up other free leaflets. I think I'm a terror for picking up free leaflets to find out as much as possible about where we're visiting. A more modern map of Amsterdam showing where they brought the railway in, the main railway line. And the main railway station is the part which shows two little train logos above the word Amsterdam. And then the main roads, main vehicular roads you can see in white, and then the yellow ones, and the blue, of course, is all the canal network. We used booking.com, which is we found to be very good, very reliable. Found this hotel on the one of the main roads just to the west of the station, and on one of the tram routes, a multiplicity of tram numbers. You could virtually get anywhere in Amsterdam from this particular spot. So it was very useful. Fantastic hotel, doing bed and breakfast, and the breakfasts were really good. This was our room. This was the wallpaper to our room, which we thought was quite fun, but a very comfortable room. There's the hotel, and bikes everywhere, and you can see the tram lines. Just down from the hotel, the headquarters of the Dutch Post Office had their building here, and then when Post Office was relocated, this became the most fabulous shopping centre. The interior with all these high-end boutique shops and little restaurants and food shops selling cheese. There it is again. And behind me is the Royal Palace, and just off to the right is the New Kirk, the new church. The Royal Palace. We arrived in Amsterdam probably about 10:30, 11 o'clock in the morning, and wandered around this first afternoon, and it was cloudy and cold. And we thought, oh dear, we just hope the rest of the week isn't going to be like that. But in actual fact, the rest of the week was fantastic. But you can have a tourist horse ride around the city with these guys, but obviously it was a bit cold, I think. This is the Damrak, the first area that was used to for the ships, the sailing ships, to tie up against the wharfs, and the warehouses that the merchants used. Obviously now later converted into housing, and very extremely desirable housing. To the south and west of the immediate city centre, there's the museum quarter. So we have the famous Rijksmuseum, we have the Van Gogh Museum, we have the Stedelijk Museum there, and then we've got the concert hall, the famous Concertgebouw. The Rijksmuseum, the treasures in the Rijksmuseum are just wonderful, the paintings and artifacts, and one could spend days in here alone exploring. And I suppose one of the most famous paintings in the Rijksmuseum is Rembrandt's Die Nachtwacht, the Night Watch. This represents a group of, it's a private army really, the various city guilds and tradesmen got together and often had their little private armies, and these as much not for defense as for status. But it's an extraordinary painting, and we got to the museum at opening time in order to make our way straight here, because normally there are crowds and crowds of people and it's difficult to get up close to the painting and see the quality of the work by Rembrandt. Another city and guilds group, they're very proud of their status in Amsterdam in the Golden Age, and that's reflected in these wonderful paintings. And there's also various artifacts and recreations of rooms, and this wonderful cradle from child's cradle from the 18th century. And outside the museum, there was a Banksy painting. I love this, with a little boy with a paper bag that he's going to burst and frighten the life out of the soldiers. So into the New Kirk. The New Kirk is near the main square, and it was built in the 1600s. And like a lot of churches, they're tall and lofty, and a lot of clear glass, so the interiors are really quite wonderful. One of the transepts of the New Kirk, and this is the choir organ built in 1645. The thing about organs in Holland is that the state provides funding for restoration, and often in the important the big civic churches, you'll have a civic organist as well as the church's organist, and they treat their organs with considerable respect. I just wish that this country had the same funding available, but that's the choir organ. And then the main organ, this amazing instrument built in 1655 by an organ builder called Hans Schoonat, and these very, very elaborate sculptural decorate corbels out to hold the rough positive case, and the main case behind with decorated shutters to the, and they do sound wonderful. The interior looking eastwards, liturgical east, with this wonderful tester over the pulpit, and the carved handrail and decoration on the balustrading on the steps up to the pulpit, showing, I suppose, indicative of the wealth of that there was around when the church was built. On a polished brass screen with the organ behind. One of the shops outside where you could buy Russian dolls, but I'm not sure I want a Trump Russian doll, but there we go. Back onto the main canal area that's near the station, and this is their multi-story vehicle park. Peter said yesterday, how do we know where we've put our bike? But, and so part of the city card that you get for free travel and so on includes a free canal trip where you explore the canals, and it's a great way of exploring the older part of the city. That in the background is the main station. So on the canal, and lots of bridges over, and almost every single piece of railing along the bridges are covered with bikes. Some of the houses that were originally warehouses, and you can see over the tops at the top of the gable there's a projecting beam which is used to haul up the goods, the produce, but now it's used to haul up furniture, as that's really the only way to get the furniture in. You take the window out and you haul up whatever. And on one occasion I was in Amsterdam, I saw a grand piano being hauled up and then swung through a window. Again, one of the canals. And several of these traditional lift bridges that cross the canals at various points. Of course, that was when they were sailing ships using the canals and the warehousing. This was the you had to have lifting bridges. Nowadays, the canals are not used for taller ships, so a lot of fixed bridges instead. And all along you'll find houseboats of various in various states of decoration, various states of repair, and so on. That's the tower that is the entrance to the original canal ring, sort of a guard tower. And again, on the left, a much more modern house that's obviously had to be built in a style similar to the original, because the whole of the central area is a UNESCO World Heritage Site, but showing the Y shape on the central house there. Those are iron ties to tie the facade of the building back into the main part, and shutters on the windows. This guy's houseboat has this balcony. I'm not sure whether I'd want to use it, but there we go. And then out the canal trip, boat trip takes us out into the central, this tidal area of the inland sea, and this modern Nemo Science Centre. And on the Science Centre, you've got, as you can see, it's ramped up and you're able to walk right up to the top. So the views are pretty spectacular from there. More modern buildings on the north side of the main part of Amsterdam. back into the Damrak, and there's the most fantastic pancake shop that we found there, where we could have all sorts of. I think the recipe card, the menu has probably 40 or 50 different fillings that you can have with your pancakes. And it's a good way to recharge the batteries. The Nikolai Church in the distance, and the obvious bikes. A nice variety of styles of gable ends there. Houses, and then probably with domestic quarters above, but now either trendy hotels or quite desirable residences. And the Oud Kerk, the old church, one of the first of the churches to be built, it was built originally in the 14th century, and all around the side, the transept of the Oud Kerk are these little merchants' shops, which are now being converted into the red light district. So the wares that are being sold are slightly different. Stone, of course, is not an easy commodity in that part of the Netherlands. Brick is the favoured material for building, using the clay from the boggy ground. And the bricks, Amsterdam's bricks are interesting because in the UK, our old traditional brick size would be 9 inches by 4.5 inches by 3 inches, 3 inches high. And with Amsterdam, they're probably 2 inches high. So you get a feeling of a different scale on the buildings. However, inside the Oud Kerk, these wonderful stone slab floors with often with memorials on them, and these lovely private pews where the merchants would sit with a little canopy over them, tester over them. A lot of the churches, the interiors of the churches have these fabulous brass chandeliers. And you can see over to the left at the bottom there, a ship's model. And often you'd get models of the merchant ships hung within the church bays, underneath of one of the chandeliers, and the timber vaulting. And the choir organ of the Oud Kerk, quite an important instrument. And the main organ was currently under restoration, so all the facade pipes had disappeared, but you can see the carving to the casework. That instrument's now back up and running in 2019, 2020. Back to the museum quarter, because we were lucky enough, we'd found that there was a concert on at the Concertgebouw while we were there, a concert of Bach and Handel. So we had treated ourselves, and the Concertgebouw all lit up at night. And this is the view inside the Concertgebouw. The acoustics are absolutely fabulous in there. One of the great concert halls of Europe. Back onto the road where our hotel was, and yeah, once you've crossed the road, how you get onto the pavement there, I don't know, but more barges, and the main area that a lot of the merchant shipping would come in originally, before the North Sea Canal was built. I love this guy's idea of artificial grass and artificial cows, but it's quite fun. And this day we were on our way to go to the Maritime Museum, which is a real treasure house. It's in the original arsenal, and the Navy gave it up in about 1940s, 50s or something like that. And since then, it's been the Maritime Museum with ship models, ship paintings, and all sorts of artifacts, and the history of the trade with the Dutch East Indies and so on. And just by the harbour side, this lovely little architectural museum telling the architectural history of the city. And in the background, you can just see the Nemo building with its ramped roof where you walk up. Inside the architectural museum, with showing how the development of the city grew. And then the Maritime Museum, 1656 building. Internally, they've roofed over the courtyard in a similar way that they roofed over the British Museum courtyard. And there's a nice restaurant there. There's a very nice shop, and there's some fantastic artifacts, ship models and paintings from various periods. I'm glad I'm not in that boat, in that kind of weather. There's a more modern painting of the docks. And the Amsterdam, the sailing ship, the Amsterdam. Royal barge. Back, this was from the Nemo building, looking across to the, in the distance on the top right there, the Maritime Museum. St. Nikolai Church and more shipping. And yeah, this is the bike tour shop. So quite a nice advert. Mike's Bike Tours. So I think, yeah, that's the end of the first part. Right, back to the map of the centre of the city, and if you can see where my arrow is hovering, that's the road that we were staying. Our hotel was on this road here, so you can see how near the station we were, and this is the down square with the palace underneath there, and the pancake shops here for those who are interested. Maritime Museums further down over here. Good, right. Detour to Haarlem. There's Amsterdam and there's Haarlem. Haarlem's about 12 miles away. Now, I know Peter will know, but those who have any interest in the organ and the history of the organ will know in Holland there are one or two key instruments. There's Alkmaar, there's a range of instruments up in Groningen in North Holland, and there's Haarlem. And Haarlem has this extraordinary instrument that was built in 1738 by an organ builder called Christian Müller. And it was one of the organs that Mozart visited and played. But that's as much as anything, I suppose. It was, we wanted to see Haarlem, we wanted to see the architecture, the village, the town, but it was a bit of a pilgrimage, I suppose. So, Amsterdam, leaving on the Intercontinental Express there, we were on a slower train, and one of the stations in Amsterdam suburbs before heading out to Haarlem. Haarlem's sorry, yeah, Haarlem was on the River Span, and it was near coastal sand dunes. It was just on a ridge of the sand dunes, really, for many years, and was affected by flooding and so on. But it also became the centre for the tulip bulb growing area. So it's also been given a nickname Blumenstadt, Flower City. But there was this particular canal, or one of these canals, rivers that you can see, was the main route in to Amsterdam. And so Haarlem was controlling and taxing the shipping that was going across to Haarlem. And Amsterdam got a bit narked by this. So that was when they sought alternative routes. And really, since the main shipping doesn't come through Haarlem any longer, this area, the center of the city, has remained very much an area, and architecturally is very exciting. I rather like this bleaching fields. They were a lot of linen, flax and linen were grown in the fields, and they've got the linen out to dry there, having been bleached. But in the distance there, the extraordinary church of St. Bavo, towering above the flat landscape. And a lot of Dutch churches are like that you can see them for miles away. Central Station that you arrive in is up near the top of the map there to the north. And then what we did was we walked from there towards the River Span on the right, and walked along there, meandered round the bend, and then into the big church. Where's my arrow gone there? The main church is there, Kirk or St. Bavo. Fewer canals, no, well, some warehousing, but a lot of nice traditional Dutch architecture, and being there in April, nice lot of daffodils. This is on the River Span. There's a rather nice traditional windmill for pumping from one of the canals. General, this gives you an overall flavour of Haarlem. I think it's a delightful place to wander around, and with this traditional architecture and the river and waterways. Underneath this particular windmill, there is a rather nice restaurant which we used after we'd been exploring. The tower of the Joseph Kirk, really elaborate, and a lot of the Dutch church towers split in perhaps into octagonal shapes, but often have these crowns on top. And another famous thing with church towers in Holland are the carillons, that they have a series of bells for playing hymn tunes and things like that, which will give the place tremendous character. And this is one of the enclosed courtyards, which was rather nice, with the Joseph Kirk behind. Again on the River Span, and one or two boats still around, and a lift. You can just see a lift bridge in the distance behind the boat. And some of the traditional houses with this crow gable, the stepped gables and the shutters, and this beautiful narrower brick. A lift bridge, and behind the St Nicolai Kirk. And then we come to the Groot Kerk, St Bavo, 1400, 1500. And again, it's very, very lofty, and with merchants' houses clustered around the base. But to the right at the lower level is the aisle around the apse at the end of the church. And just a nice view of the old brick of the church. Another view, and again, very tall octagonal lead-covered spire tower with a crown on the top, and again containing a carillon. This is outside the church in the market square and the town hall, a very attractive building, and getting quite busy. We arrived fairly early in the morning, well, for us possibly around about 10, half 10, something like that. And so into the church, nice coloured limestone with, and then they paint the plaster white to increase the daylight, and these wonderful chandeliers. This was what I wanted to see. Unfortunately, no one was playing, but I have heard recordings, and YouTube has probably got quite a number of recordings of St Bavo organ. You've got the small case in front, in the foreground there. The organist sits in between the main case and this, and this part, if I find my arrow, this part here is called the rook positive or back positive. And it's the same rook that you get rucksack from. And then the main keyboard area is the center here, and the pedals, the pedal pipe work will be in the side towers, so you can read what you've got. You've got the main Oberwerk there, and right up at the top another division of the organ. Wonderful instrument, but really over the top in terms of decoration. All this gilding, gilded mouths to the pipes. Pipes are nearly pure tin, and civic pride, I think, as much as anything. Looking from under the organ on the body of the church with this row of wonderful chandeliers. And two more views, the rook positive with the timber vaulting and the choir organ, and rather an attractive modern stained glass window in the transept. The vaulting. I mean, in this country, vaulting is often done in stonework, but here, in order to lighten the load, because they're not building on particularly good load-bearing ground, it was constructed in timber. And this fantastic stone screen right at the east end of the church, and the colouring there is light coming through stained glass, giving that red colour. And as I said before, with Amsterdam and a lot of these churches, the Dutch churches, they celebrate their maritime heritage by hanging ships' models in the bays between the aisle and the nave. a nice piece of ceiling paintwork at the crossing, 2 transepts either side, and the main nave and chancel are the timber work there. So back out into the streets in Haarlem for a wander round, and another view of the church. And I like the variety of materials used for the pavements, stone and brick.
Well,
Beautiful texture.
Oh, I see. Oh, right.
I'm not sure what to have. I'll click on this and don't
No,
say
don't.
anything.
And
No, I'm very reluctant.
Yeah.
typical houses.
Curious.
We're not muted.
Typical houses down the side streets of a much more domestic size than the warehouses in Amsterdam, but nonetheless very attractive. And then this wonderful started life as an almshouse, but is now the museum for Frans Hals paintings. Born in Haarlem and worked there for a while. The interesting thing here is that the bench, the seats are not Dutch by any stretch of the imagination. They were designed by Edwin Lutyens, but it's a fabulous museum, well worth visiting. And April, you get a good display of daffodils. Just outside the museum's on the left, and see these wonderful gables and chimneys and so on. Very, very attractive side streets. Back that St. Bavo across the River Span, and a lock gate. There we go. Lock keeper's mechanism there, and a red traffic light for the lock, which took them into a canal from the river. The nice sailing ship and the lifting bridge. And another courtyard. And as I say, a nice restaurant there. And so Haarlem station, waiting for our train, which is this one that's coming in. To take us back to Amsterdam. The nice thing about the Dorling Kindersley guide to Amsterdam is that you've got these street elevations, and there's 3 pages of these. So one could spend a day almost sort of researching the history of each of the warehouses and who had worked and what product was being brought into there. Looking across the canal. So we've got a couple of houseboats in the foreground. I love this. This table and chairs are on top of a houseboat. In some ways, that photograph speaks for itself. It gives you the variety of the warehousing. There's a simplicity almost in the grid of windows and brickwork and patterning. The detail of one of the houses. This is near the house that Rembrandt worked in. Into one of the museums where they have the whole of their ground floor is taken up by these amazing pictures of the various guilds and their, well, I was going to say private armies, but their bodyguards. And I think it was the done thing, just as in this country, the landed gentry wanted to have their portraits painted. I think here it was a question of civic pride. Our guild is as good as yours, and we'll have a bigger picture and whatever. And it's quite overwhelming when you arrive in this main entrance part of this museum to see just all these wonderful paintings. Another part of the museum, another little instrument with shutters, decorated shutters. And cheese and beer shop, Bimster, and lots of Dutch cheeses there, Gouda, and so on. Nice brickwork, red shutters, and the beams. And inside Rembrandt's museum, Rembrandt's studio, it's worth a visit. Because there's somebody there explaining the processes of creating the oil paints by grinding up the ingredients with linseed oil, and showing how the various rocks ground together could make the pigments for. So Rembrandt would have had an assistant, probably working most of the day doing nothing but grinding up the paint ready for Rembrandt to use. And so on to the eastern part of Amsterdam. In the east sector, there's the Portuguese synagogue. When the Jews were evicted from the Iberian Peninsula, a lot of them found refuge in Amsterdam, amongst other places. Very tolerant interfaith relationships there, and there's not only the synagogue but a museum attached. But the building itself, architecturally, is very, very beautiful. Very simple elevation, and nonetheless the proportions are beautiful. And inside, the clarity of light. This is up in the women's gallery. Nice chandeliers, nice glazing, and down in the main area. Over to the Stedelijk Museum. This has been described as the bathtub because of the shape of the roof over it, very modern, attached to a more traditional building. But fine museum, fine collection, and just across the road, there's the Van Gogh Museum. And those who like Van Gogh, there are some quite fabulous examples of his work. There's some renovations going on in this house. So here you see a beam in action, one of the lifting beam. And the guy's taken a couple of windows out, and you can see him lifting up a bucket. And the house to the left of him there, there's also a pulley ready for hauling stuff up, the red pulley. Margaret? She didn't know that was coming on. Yeah, typical street view. In a corner of one of the canals, canal going through a corner of the roads. And again, a variety of gables. The cornicing and gabling occasionally looks quite precarious, and you can see on the particular one, the main one here, the flat-topped cornice, the one with dental mouldings underneath, that there's a strap, a tie going back to the main roof to stop it toppling over. Again, the beam coming through there with the lifting hook, but there's the strap going back from this piece. This one looks a bit more stable. Over to the western part of Amsterdam, there's the Westerkerk. This church now is not only used for worship on Sundays, but is also used for conferences and exhibitions. And they've got an equally fine organ in that church, but unfortunately we couldn't get in because there was a conference on. But one of the tallest towers in Amsterdam. And as I say, there, the burial site of Rembrandt. It's a beautiful building. And we were lucky with the weather, as you can see, that nice and sunny. This is a fascinating area, and you would struggle without a detailed street map. You'd struggle to find it, but it's basically a little cloistered area of traditional housing at a church as a sanctuary, as it says there, for the Beginges. Somebody will pronounce that probably much better than me, a lay Catholic sisterhood. And they live there, like, I suppose it's a little nunnery. Beautiful. And outside, there's the trams, the cars, the hustle and bustle of city life, and you come in here and it's a quiet, peaceful sanctuary with all these beautiful buildings, and you're asked to respect the fact that people are still living here and that you don't run riot. And their little church that's part of the complex. Inside the church, simple little church, with the beams painted blue, which is nice. And they have a little chamber organ in the east end, and they have a more decorative historic instrument in the gallery at the west end. But the housing was particularly attractive. Of course, this was built as for housing, not and for the sisterhood, not a warehouses. So it's been housing all the time, but still the traditional way of getting your furniture to the first floor is still the beam at the top and pulling it up by pulley. Very attractive, peaceful place to sit in the sun. The main museum that's near the palace area with some fine paintings, models, again telling the life of Amsterdam. And at the time we were visiting, they had this most extraordinary quilt on the floor. That's how to do it. We find mirrors. And back to our the St. Nikolai Church, and a view across and with the more modern tower blocks of Amsterdam and the suburbs in the distance. So I think that's, yeah, there we go. This was in the Frans Hals Museum in Haarlem. I couldn't talk about Amsterdam and Haarlem without showing some tulips, could I? That's me.